Hello and welcome to the Watch Your Mouth podcast, a podcast all about phrase etymology and why we say the things that we say. I'm Milo.
And I'm Dave.
He's my dad.
And she is my daughter.
That is how that works.
Yeah, it is.
Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, welcome. We have an interesting one today. This is one has been a little bit of a challenge.
Ooh.
And we strive for honesty on the podcast. And you know where I'm going with this, Milo.
Uh-huh.
We recorded a couple episodes back-to-back a couple weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
Number one was on queer terminology.
Yep, Happy Pride Month.
Yep, and then we tried to do this episode
Directly after. And if you listen to it, that episode was a little bit more serious.
Yeah.
And then this one's a little bit lighter. And we kind of went crazy. And it's unlistenable and just very silly. So you're hopefully going to be getting a more focused...
Yeah.
As focused as we can be.
Well, which isn't a lot, because if you've been listening, you know we do tangents and bunny trails.
Yep.
And this was a tough one to research because some of the episodes we get into and the phrases, there's some really clear paths and interesting stories to take.
Robust histories.
This one, there wasn't a lot there.
Okay.
And so as we went into it, and on the heels of a very heavy, just kind of a dense and some important topics to talk about, we're doing this very lighthearted kind of strange term.
Yes.
And I don't know, we weren't drinking.
No, but it was like 11 p.m.
And we had a lot of fun. And I don't know, maybe at some point it'll be a bonus episode if you really like this podcast, because that's what it would take to get through it.
Yes.
I got done with that podcast and I said, I don't know if anyone will listen to this. And then you went to edit it.
And I decided that no one would listen to it.
Yeah, I don't know. The ultimate height of us being silly.
Yes.
So who knows, maybe at some point. So today for this episode, I chose the term suck it up.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, again, like I said, I had to dig a little bit more for this one, but I did uncover, I would call a couple tasty little bits of trivia, which I have woven into this episode, and which I have specially prepared and seasoned them for your listening consumption.
Sounds like you're describing a Triscuit.
I am. This is the Triscuit of episodes. I don't know if that's good. Anyway.
Crumbly.
It is crumbly, and it's stuck in your throat a little bit. I don't know what that means at all. For those of you who have been listening faithfully, we do appreciate now that we're kind of getting our feet underneath us a little bit. Don't you think?
Yeah. I hope so, yeah.
Well, I think so. And for those of you who are paying attention, you notice that I will run an episode, and then my daughter Milo will run an episode. And so
Equality.
What?
Equality.
Yeah, that's right. That's what we strive for. So the last time I did an episode, I did basket case, which if you were listening, you probably remember this was a term that originated during what war?
World War I.
World War I, that's right. And so for this episode, I thought, you know what, I'm going to kind of try to keep a little bit of that military theme. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that suck it up is sort of attached to the military as well.
Okay.
But as many of our episodes go, this one is also a bit murky, and there's controversy about where this comes from and what it's about.
Okay.
So we're going to do this a little bit in a different way, because we're gonna spend a lot of time on a subject that you wouldn't think would have anything to do with the phrase. Mm-hmm. But there's some interesting stuff there, and that's why we're going there. We'll get to that in just a second. So this term "suck it up" seems like it originally originated from the military.
Originally originated.
We do like redundancy on the podcast. Thank you for calling me out. I appreciate that. You're familiar with the term "suck it up," right?
Yes.
How would you define it?
So my understanding of it is it has kind of a patriarchal bent to it, where I picture like a baseball diamond and like a young boy falls and skins his knee.
What's the boy's name?
Chuck.
Chuck, we might as well go into the details.
Yeah, so poor little Chuck. He's 8 years old. It's his first big game. He's so excited, but he falls and skins his knee. Oh no. Yeah, poor Chuck. But his coach or his dad comes over and tells him to suck it up or rub some dirt on it. Something to that extent.
Walk it off. Also
because
good.
Men are not allowed to feel pain.
we did another episode we recorded earlier today about some more queer terminology. So we were talking about things like the patriarchy and things like that. I feel like that's bled over a little bit into this
It's always
episode.
in my brain.
It's okay.
I did have a coworker the other day, I may cut this out, who was talking about how annoyed she is that none of her boyfriends have ever been like emotionally available and how it's hard to like get through to them.
Sure.
And then literally within 30 seconds she turned around and told a dad whose kid was crying to tell the kid that boys don't cry. And I was like, wow, you think there's maybe a cause and effect here?
It so encapsulates so much.
It was a nice little capsule of what I think this phrase is about.
Actually, that's not wrong. It's not bad. So you're right. The term "suck it up," which I think we try to do mostly terms that people have heard of a lot, and I'm sure you've all heard of "suck it up." It probably literally means more to accept a hardship. Mm-hmm. You skin your knee, suck it up, go play the game. You aren't feeling well, but have an important meeting to attend, suck it up and go to work. Unless you have a fever and a cough, you should probably stay home. Or, this is a personal rule I have. Uh-huh. And I've had this for a while. If I've thrown up a weeknight, or a Sunday night, I'm not going to work the next day.
That seems more than fair.
Yeah, because, nobody wants puking in the workplace.
No.
Although
I will say, as a woman, and having had largely jobs where I worked with other women, vomiting is a more common occurrence, and most of us just suck it up.
So can I ask you this? And this episode's going to get a little gross, so we're just going to start to dive into it now.
Yeah, it's going to be the most bodily fluidy episode yet.
And I'm not a bodily fluid guy. I'm not one of those guys who thinks
he is a robot.
I am a robot.
His only bodily fluid is oil.
It's oil. It's synthetic oil. It's high quality. It's true. I'm not ashamed of it. Don't shame my robotness. Domo arigato, Mr. Rose. Anyway, so let me ask you a question.
Sure.
When is the last time you threw up?
It's been a while. Probably like in February or so like a couple months ago.
I threw up probably about 6 months ago.
Okay.
And that was the first time I had thrown up in over a decade.
Wow.
Because I'm like...
You don't get sick very often, though.
I don't get sick very often, and it's not... We're not going to get too gross here, but when I throw up, it's never pretty when anyone throws up. But when I throw up, it's a full body exercise.
Yeah.
Like, I break blood vessels in my face.
Your eyes bulgy.
And I don't know how not to do that.
Yeah.
But, so that's why. If I've been throwing up, I need 24 hours to recoup.
You are out of commission.
I'm done. And we talked about this before the first time we recorded this episode. You've never really called in sick to work. No.
I have left work sick once, I think. Like, my boss made me go home because I was very, very sick. But I've never called in.
I would say your pain tolerance is pretty high, yeah?
Yes, and not to go into the gender thing, but I also think that's just a taught thing of like women are taught to
disagree.
Bury their pain a little bit.
Yeah, and I would agree. And so I had asked in the first time we recorded this if you had ever called in to sick when you weren't really sick, and you surprised me with your response of, well, I've never even called in sick. So I'm like, oh, not anticipating that response. I've probably done that a couple times, just like I try not to lie. I'm just like, I'm taking a sick day today. Yes. I hope you feel better. Thanks, boss. You. Have a great day. But I try not to make a habit of it.
That's good.
All right, so...
Hello, my dad's boss, if you're listening.
Hey, or any boss I've ever had.
Yes.
No, I don't get sick very often, but this actually leads into the origins of the term suck it up.
There is illness involved.
There is the potentially mythical origins of suck it up, or apocryphal. Is that what you'd say?
Probably apocryphal. Unless there's like a phoenix involved, then we're probably talking.
There is a phoenix.
Oh, good.
There's gods and goddesses, a phoenix.
Great.
It's true. Some X-Men. No. So, yeah, sorry that, again, this is getting a little bit gross. But and there's also some disagreement. So we're going to talk about whether this is the actual origin of this phrase or not. Okay. So, I think you understand, when you fly, you get higher up in the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. Pilots fly up, or people in planes, they need oxygen. Yep. Right?
Cabin pressure.
Yeah. And also the name of another podcast.
Not a podcast, but a radio show that's super great, and you should all listen to it.
Yep. You should. It's done now, though.
Oh, yeah. It's been done for 6 years, probably.
Oh, well, I don't know. Benedict Cumberbatch is in it, so good stuff.
Roger Allen.
So when you get up higher, you need oxygen. The more you get higher in the atmosphere, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. And not surprisingly, there's times pilots would get nauseous when they're flying with the lack of oxygen and different things. And as pilots need oxygen and might get nauseous, pilots often, as they get too high in the atmosphere, have to wear an air mask. They're getting nauseous. Well, throwing up into the air mask is problematic.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, because if you are going to breathe in those fumes of the vomit, you can't breathe the vomit into your lungs. Breathe in the actual,
that would be bad.
So the pilots would have one choice, and that choice would be to suck it up. Yeah. As a dog returneth to its vomit. It's a proverb, actually. So there it is.
I didn't know that. I don't remember that one.
It's an actual. I didn't know you knew the proverbs that well. It's a proverb.
I've read the Bible.
I know you have. I just didn't know if you remember the proverbs. So as a dog returns to its vomit, yeah. So
does the pilot. That's how that proverb ended.
It really did. Solomon, being very visionary at the time, kind of like a Leonardo da Vinci. No, but so pilots supposedly at times would vomit into their air mask, and then they couldn't leave it in there, so they would suck it up. Okay, well, that's it. Thanks for stopping by.
Cool.
You're welcome for the visual. No, I'm kidding. There's more here. We're going to get into some different details, as I mentioned. Now, I know this is not dinner table conversation, and I hope you're not eating right now.
Sorry if you are.
I know. I got to imagine, and hopefully at some point we get more than a dozen listeners. Somebody's eating their lunch listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
What do you think they're eating?
They're not eating anymore.
What do you think they're eating, Milo?
Oh, hopefully not soup.
Oh, God. Okay, we're just going to leave that right there. I'm not someone who gets grossed out a lot. Mm-hmm. I live in a home right now with my wife.
Several young men.
And 4 young men, and between 18 and 23 years old. And as you can guess, there's a lot of topics that aren't super great for dinner time.
Yeah.
As we're trying to eat food. Not a lot bothers me, but we do have one of... I will not mention my stepchild by name, but he really thinks talking about poop and pee and farting is hilarious.
Delightful.
Yeah, not my thing.
No.
Don't think that's funny at all. So you can, you'll know this for the future. You won't hear a lot of bodily humor jokes.
Probably not.
Unless it has to do with being a robot and not having bodily fluids. Apparently that's fair game.
We'll only go in the opposite direction.
That's right. So as I was digging into this episode... Again, trying to be honest with you listeners, I almost stopped on this one because I wasn't sure there was enough here for a full episode. But as I do with everyone that I research, and I think you do too, as our tagline is, which is, what's our tagline?
Stay curious.
Yeah, which
or
is
different. Or a podcast for the curious.
Yeah, right. And then which is different than a podcast for the furious.
The Fast and the Furious.
The different podcast, the podcast for the furious. I don't know what that would be about.
It's the 2 down on the right. You came to the wrong place. Scoot on over.
A little farther down. You want to be angry. This is not the place. But I decided to persevere because I did find some things, and I went the route of aviation.
Okay.
As I started to look into the origins of this phrase and what possibly where it may have came from, I really started to dig into aviation and pilots and flying, and I found some interesting things there, and that's kind of where the rest of this episode is going to focus. All right? So this is what I started to ask myself. Okay, so this phrase, when did the phrase start being used? Mm-hmm. If I could find that out, and when did planes start going high enough to need oxygen? There's the crux right there.
Yeah.
because if this is an apocryphal phrase, the origins of that I heard were apocryphal, there's the answer.
Yeah.
Right? So I started to look into that.
Detective David.
There's another little tagline. We'll be doing that later. We also have one for bunny trails. What's the bunny trail?
I don't remember, but bunny trails.
That's right. So this episode's a bit of a bunny trail off, suck it up. But again, the truth is out there, like X-Files. I wanted to find it. I didn't want to give up. As I was looking at that primary question, when was the first time, when was it recorded that this phrase was said?
Yep.
And when did pilots start wearing air masks?
Okay.
That was my quest. But then I ran into other questions, such as, if this term truly was involved in flying, again, when did the pilots start needing oxygen masks? And why did they need oxygen the higher they went? And like, what point in history
did that become a realization?
Yes.
Yeah.
And when did they start going high enough to require it? So I kind of started going down that path, and that's the path we're on. I'm
excited to go down it with you.
I'm sure you are, as you should be. To start us off, I have a little quiz.
Great.
You ready?
I'm ready.
I think some of this you're going to know, and some of it you're not going to know.
Okay.
So, who is generally credited with building the first heavier-than-air flying machine?
Oh, that's an interesting way of putting it. Heavier than air.
Well, that's how it was phrased.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess I just don't know. Everything is heavier than air.
Well,
but okay, I'm going to probably say the Wright brothers.
Yes. Well, balloons wouldn't count.
Oh, good.
Is what they're saying.
That's a good point.
The Wright brothers is right. I mean, I'm correct. Right. Okay. Do you know where the first flight took place?
In North Carolina.
Yes. What city? Do you remember?
Really? Kitty Hawk?
Kitty Hawk, yeah.
Kitty Hawk.
That's right.
Nice.
Technically 4 miles south of Kitty Hawk, but Kitty Hawk
sorry.
No, it's the correct answer. I'm clarifying.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought
right
that
outside
was
of Kitty Hawk.
interesting.
No, it's interesting.
I know you're not going to know this, but I imagine someone will probably know this listening. I didn't know it, but do you know the date of their first sustained
Not
flight?
even a little bit.
Do you remember the year?
Nope.
Guess.
No, why do you always make me
We just talked about this. We
I know.
literally just recorded this. I told you this information 2 weeks ago.
It was like in the 30s?
No, it was not bad. 1903.
Okay.
December 17th, 1903.
The 3 was in there.
You got the 3. So, and
I'm really bad at history. I'm sorry. Don't yell at me.
It's okay. That's not your strength. Language is your strength.
Yes.
And music, lots of strengths. History's not one of them.
Thanks, Dad.
The surprising thing to know about this flight is the food was terrible. Even on that very first flight. Yes, I kept that joke. So even from the start. So anyway, another tough bonus question, and I'd be super impressed if any of you people listening actually would know this one. We need a name for our listeners. I don't know. I don't know what you'd call our listeners.
Oh, so we're not going to name them like Craig, but we're going to name them like...
You're all Craig. Or you're all Sally. I don't know.
Okay.
But you're like armchair expert. They're armcherries.
Okay. We can come up with that.
Yeah. I don't know. Watch your mouthians. I don't know. It's
not great.
It's not my best work. So I would, listeners, whatever your names are, and we'll take submissions.
There you go. Yeah, right in.
Craig and Sally. So someone probably knows the answer to this, and I'd be super impressed if they did, is what was the name of the first airplane? The one that they flew.
Mr. McZoomy.
Mr. McZoomy?
That's my guess.
Incorrect.
Damn.
Oddly enough. It was called, again, a super clever name, the Wright Flyer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Better than the Left Flyer.
No, well, it was part of their names. The Wright brothers, the Wright Flyer.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So they were obviously geniuses of engineering, not marketing, so they weren't really
That's what they needed me for.
Yeah, Mr. McZoomy. That's what they were going for. So this is a bunny trail off the bunny trail.
Okay.
And so just bear with me a second, because as I thought of this, I thought of bad names in literature.
Okay.
And I know this.
Wait, but why? Oh, because the plane had a bad name?
The plane had a bad name. So
Yeah.
then I started thinking of bad names in literature that I bumped
Right.
into. I'm not going to spend much time here, but I do have to go here just because I want to, and I'm running this episode. So there we go. And I give you a lot of latitude when you run your episodes,
That's
right?
true.
We just do what we want because, who cares? So an amazing book series called the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant by Stephen R. Donaldson. Great book, great series, 10 books, very heavy, very lengthy. My wife tried to read it, and she struggles with depression, which is public. Bad idea. Just very dark, really heavy books. So it's tough. But they've got some great names. Thomas Covenant is a fantastic
name. Pretty good.
But the main villain, you know his name.
Yeah, I do.
What is it?
It's really bad. It's Dark Lord Landwaster, Kevin?
No, that's different. It's Lord Fowl.
Lord Fowl, that's right. Who's Kevin?
Kevin Landwaster is the guy who laid waste to the land.
What, really?
Yeah. Whoa. So his name is Kevin Landwaster in the history of the land.
Kevin should just never be a name in like a magical
anything
story.
Serious at all.
No.
Sorry, Kevins. We just lost everyone listening named Kevin.
Sorry, Kevin.
Yeah,
you are our one listener. Kevin and Craig.
And Sally.
And Sally.
Yeah. There's women out there too.
And Brick for a non-binary listener.
That's right. So, yeah, not great names, but that's actually true. It's a couple clunker names, but it's good. But again, if you're down, if you're melancholy, or if you suffer depression, don't read the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, and don't watch Breaking Bad at the same time.
No, don't do that.
It will spiral. And it's kind of like mixing ammonia and bleach. Don't do that. It's a deadly combination. Okay, so as I was diving into the Wright brothers and there's a lot of interesting stuff about that time and what they were doing. Mm-hmm. It's real interesting to me. At this point in history is like the time when a lot of people were close to cracking flight.
Yes.
Which is weird. Like, why early 1900s?
Collective unconscious.
Jungian?
Yeah, he had the whole concept of the collective unconscious, of how people come to the same conclusions at the same time, even across the world. Yeah, there's actually examples of that, which maybe we'll touch on at another time. Mm-hmm. So in that time... Phones. Go on.
Cars. Yeah. Or was another one. Anyway, so they couldn't sustain flight was the problem. There's lots of because now you've got film involved. Mm-hmm. The early parts of having cameras and filming things, and you have these crazy contraptions. We've all seen little splices of them, and bouncing things and tons of wings, and they're all crashing horribly. And the confidence some of these men had is amazing. Yes. Pushing it off a cliff.
Yep. You got to be very self-assured.
Yeah, like it's gonna work, and it just drops. And it's almost funny, except, someone's getting injured, which is kind of horrific. The Wright brothers took a different tactic, though. And so the main tactic of the day was just trying to develop a more powerful engine. If you get a powerful enough engine, it'll work. Well, the Wright brothers kind of pivoted on that. Their breakthrough is called the 3-axis control system.
Snappy.
Which I thought was interesting. And that enabled the pilot to steer the aircraft effectively and to maintain its equilibrium, which they're having trouble with. Yeah. So this method remains standard today on fixed-wing aircraft of all kinds, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. I think they're called altimeters now.
Yeah. So, could be.
You responded with a lot of confidence to that.
I did. I tried to be confident. So from the beginning of their aeronautical work, the Wright brothers focused on developing a reliable method of pilot control as the key to solving the flying problem, is what it was called, instead of having the more powerful engines. Mm-hmm. Which reminds me of like in a movie when they have a big monster coming at them and they just keep shooting their guns at it and they're like, let's just get a bigger gun.
Yes.
We're just going to add power. It seems like a very male answer to things. I don't know. So, of course, as the technology increased of the planes, they were not only able to stay in flight longer, but to the problem that we had talked about, they were able to go higher. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, this presented a bit of a challenge, and of course, it was a challenge they knew they were going to confront, because we already had an idea as people in that time of what happens the higher you go in the atmosphere. Because obviously, the higher you go, it's going to be colder, and there's going to be less oxygen.
Right.
And then both of these are big problems for we humans. Now, those of us who are also robots,
you're fine,
or lizard people,
you just need more antifreeze.
Or a lizard people, we don't know what they need. But of course, people have been fascinated by flight long before the Wright brothers and their historic flight. So there is a long history of experimentation with balloons. Mm-hmm. I think that's when we really, as a people, humans started getting aware of what's happening higher up in the atmosphere. And I can't name the different parts of the atmosphere because that's not my thing.
Yeah.
There's the stratosphere.
Yep, that's the first one that I was going to name. Exosphere is just space.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is there the heliosphere? We don't know. Okay, she gave me a look like...
I don't think so, but maybe.
Well, who knows? What the helio... Okay, so... Sorry. So the first balloons going up, they were actually unmanned in the 1800s, and the French were really big into ballooning in the 1800s.
I've heard of this.
Which is kind of cool. My wife would like it because she's a Francophile. So according to the website Flight, which is kind of a cool website that I checked out, when it comes to how high you can go in the atmosphere and start needing to get oxygen is about 5,000 feet.
Okay.
You hit about 5,000 feet, air's getting thin enough, you're not going to get a lot of oxygen. Now the FAA, and they're the ones who, for America, you know, there's actually laws around, you know, flying, of course, thankfully. They said there's a legal requirement that you have to have oxygen available, at least, if you're over 12,500 feet.
Okay.
So you hit 12.5, that's really the magic number for the FAA to say you've got to have oxygen available unless the cabin's pressurized, like in a major plane,
right?
A commercial aircraft. But like a fighter pilot, things like that, that's kind of what you're looking for. But 5 probably is recommended.
Okay.
Over 12,500 required.
Gotcha.
Which I thought was kind of interesting. And here's why. And there's a little bit of science here from the Flight website. They say as you climb higher into the atmosphere, the partial pressure of oxygen decreases, which we knew. This means that the number of oxygen molecules in each volume of breath decreases, and many of the hemoglobin molecules that normally deliver oxygen to the cells travel empty. You're not taking as much in, breathing, getting into the bloodstream.
Making an inefficient system.
Yeah, so you're not getting oxygen flowing through your body because there's just not that much in the air. So a little bit of science. So now we understand a little bit about the why oxygen is needed. Now let's take a look at the when. So we talked earlier, the Wright brothers are credited with the first documented flight. We know this. I found it interesting. I knew some of the stuff of the quiz I gave you earlier. I would not have done well on it either. But I knew some of it. Do you know how high the first flight went? That first recorded flight in December.
Not even remotely.
Guess.
2 yards. Just a little bloop.
A little bloop.
Oh, I hit the mic stand.
That's okay. So the first flight made it 10 feet off the ground.
Oh, I wasn't that far off.
No, not too bad. Which is quite a bit short of the 5,000 feet needed for oxygen. So
right.
he was not, Wilbur was not short of breath. He was doing just fine 10 feet off the air. Because otherwise...
It's like standing on the second story.
with an oxygen mask. Yeah. I'm getting lightheaded.
I'm glad humans aren't that weak to...
But, well, yeah, that would be a problem.
That'd be rough.
Go on your roof and you're like... But I was surprised at how little amount of time it took. Because I'm like, well, how long did it... Okay, we fly in 1903. We're getting off the ground 10 feet. How much time does it take before you can fly 5,000 feet high? That's a huge difference. So I looked it up. So we know 1903.
Yep.
10 feet off the ground. 1906, 3 years later. You're looking for some progress. 13 feet off the ground.
Not great.
No, we're not going anywhere fast here. 1908, 360 feet.
That's
off the ground.
You know,
I mean,
substantial.
When you're 13 feet off the ground, you're like, I'm going to survive this crash probably.
Yeah.
You're 360 feet off the ground. You're not surviving that. Now you're starting to get scary. This is getting a little scary for
getting
me.
real.
Yeah. And actually, it was Wilbur Wright again that did that.
Okay.
1909, now all of a sudden exponentially better. 3,018 feet in 1909. Wow. Yeah, you're not living
that's substantial.
Yeah, so huge progress done by a Frenchman, Louis Paulhan.
Yeah, probably.
Louis Paulhan, sure. Then in 1910, they did it. 8,471 feet.
That is
above.
Very high.
It's very high. So the first couple of years, not great progress, but in 7 years, they went from 10 feet to 8,471 feet above the earth.
That's incredible.
That's wild. Mm-hmm. What a shift in even cultural consciousness of what people were able to do.
Of the capability of,
absolutely,
technology.
Because before that, of course, for years, they're like, flight's impossible. It will never be done. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, 7 years after we crack it...
Thou shalt be strucken down like Icarus.
Yes, Icarus with the sheer hubris. I don't know why that was English, but there you go. So we're at a place where oxygen is recommended.
Right.
Right? And then, also in 1910, later in the year, someone flew over 10,000 feet, which is pretty amazing. And I only include that fact because of the man's name. And I know that you like...
I like a good name.
Yeah. He was an aviator who worked for the Wright brothers, and his name was Archibald Hoxsey.
Ooh, good old Archibald.
Archie Hoxsey. It's pretty good, right? But he worked for the Wright brothers, which I thought was kind of interesting.
You know, I'm in the process of legally changing my name, and that's a long and arduous process, but now I'm thinking of starting all over just for Archibald.
We're going to have to do another episode of just, hey, you know, you've heard Milo, you've heard Michelle.
It's now Archibald.
It's now Archie. No, don't do that. Okay.
No, I don't plan on it.
Another aspect of this that interested me was this. Well, okay, we know we go too far up in the atmosphere. We know we're going to get really cold. We know we're going to run out of oxygen. Well, how does that affect the human body? We know the hemoglobin, you know, the oxygen is not carrying enough oxygen. So what effect does that have? So I kind of looked into that a little bit. Well, you get something called hypoxia.
Okay.
All right. And
wait, what was that guy's last name again?
Hypoxia.
Hypoxia.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if those are connected, but it wouldn't surprise me. So this is weird because hypoxia affects people differently.
Interesting.
Yeah. So a lot of it depends on where you live.
Okay, that makes sense.
So you live in Denver, a mile-high city. You're used to less oxygen. Your body is acclimated to it.
Right.
You're not going to have as severe as a response or reaction to someone who lives in Michigan, which is not a ton above sea level, I don't believe. Or someone who lives in Death Valley, which is below sea level. A lot of oxygen there. So I bet they have a real hard time.
Chewy air.
Chewy. That doesn't sound good at all. and you remember going on family trips a couple times to Colorado.
Yeah.
And
air definitely gets thin.
We have been near the top of mountains, and I was very surprised at the effect it had. I didn't get altitude sickness, but how quickly you run out of breath was just...
Especially when you're hiking around doing physical.
Or trying to, anyway.
Yeah.
So here's some symptoms of hypoxia. Pressure behind the eyes, impaired judgment, inability to make calculations, euphoria, and diminished vision.
So drunk.
Yeah, that's right. Diminished vision, and of course, is a huge problem when people are flying.
Yes.
And the effects of hypoxia can be worse at night.
Oh.
This was interesting. Our eyes produce a special protein called rhodopsin to help with night vision, and they need oxygen to make it.
Okay.
So we have a little bit of night vision. Humans do. Robots are much better. But I did not know there's a special protein called rhodopsin or rhodopsin. I don't know. We think that's
we're learning today.
Rhodopsin there.
Rhodopsin, yeah, probably.
So this is where I finally arrive at. When did this phrase start, and when did everything come together? You've
laid out all the clues. Now it's time to draw the lines between them.
That's right. If it wasn't for these kids... sorry, I went Scooby-Doo there a second. So according to Wikipedia, it was in 1919 when a high-altitude oxygen system was being first used. And of course, it was very simplistic, and they had a vacuum flask of liquid oxygen that they would use. And to quote Wikipedia, because I don't understand this, and this is horrifying, they had to warm the oxygen because the oxygen was very, very cold.
Yeah.
So it says the liquid passed through several warming stages before use, as expansion, when it evaporated and absorbed latent heat of vaporization, would make the gasified oxygen so cold that it would cause instant frostbite of the lungs.
Nope, don't like the frostbite of the lungs.
Frostbite of the lungs.
That is deeply unfortunate.
You know that happened to somebody.
It had to have. That's the price of progress, I guess. But
oh my gosh, can you imagine paying that price?
I'm guessing you don't survive that.
You've been real cold before.
I live in Michigan, so
and
yes.
You've lived in Iowa.
That also.
And so you've felt intense cold.
Yes.
You've never gotten frostbite.
No.
Probably, who knows, hopefully not too close. But being really cold sucks.
Yes.
Frostbite of the lungs.
Yeah, I don't see ever getting past that.
The first guy takes a breath and is like,
yep.
He can't even talk.
No, I have to think that's pretty gruesome.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. And so they needed to figure out a way to warm it. And as time went along and they got better and better technology, they created an oxygen mask. And now this is for you because this is this guy's name. He was an Armenian doctor.
Ooh.
And his name is Arthur Bulbulian.
I like the Bulbulian. That's very nice.
1941.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and of course, according to the FAA, you really need oxygen once you fly up around 12,500 feet. So we know they're using oxygen in 1919. We know in 1912 we had a person flying over 18,000 feet.
Yeah.
And full-on oxygen masks came along in 1941. So we've got all those pieces laid out. So when is the first recorded usage of Suck It Up? And that's what we're going to go to next. Is this apocryphal story true, this gross story, or is it something somebody thought up because who knows, because people are weird?
Yes.
So what do you think? Well, you already know.
Yeah, we did this already.
You did this already. So, but you don't know, listener. You don't know.
Welcome, listener.
I wonder what you think. Do you think it's true or do you think it's made up?
The masterful last stroke of a detective.
Dun, dun, dun. You'll have to tune into the next episode because we're a crappy game show. I hate that so much.
Yeah.
But we'll find out after the break.
That's why he's called Cliffhanger.
What is that from?
That's from Between the Lions, a PBS kids show from the 90s.
Shout out. All right. So the first usage of the expression suck it up that I could find, remember, if it's pre-1941, it's not legit. Right? So the first usage of suck it up was in a magazine called the American Legion Monthly in October 1935.
Oh!
Our friend Carl Detzer, sorry, not a great name, he wrote in an article, and on every movie lot where they are shooting army pictures, you'll find an ex-top kick, or two, I don't know what that means, who can brawl at a line of extras to suck it up or tuck it in.
Oh. I'm not sure what that means, but... Another
episode, for sure.
But it's interesting it still has a military root.
It does still kind of, and that's what brought me here.
Yeah.
Because I actually heard it on a different podcast that suck it up meant that, but they weren't sure if it was true. And I'm like, well, I'm going to hit that one next.
Find out if it is or not.
It's not. I don't think it's true.
Interesting. Maybe it popularized it.
Yeah, that could be. And it sounds like something that and stories like that stick just because they're kind of sensationalistic.
Yes, and gross.
Yeah, and that kind of catches people's attention, and it's a story that's going to get passed around. And of course, I'm glad it's a myth, but if you think about it, and some of the other episodes we've had, if you think about the phrase and some of the stories that are put together, you do start to go, wait a second. In this one, if you needed to throw up, why would you throw up into the thing that's giving you oxygen? Why would you not rip the oxygen mask off?
I mean, your hands might be busy.
Throw up to the side.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think for a second you could maybe take one hand off.
I would hope so, at least.
Yeah. For
the sake of all these pilots.
Yeah, a couple other quick little tidbits that I found out just to wrap this up. So, of course, once flight was achieved in 1903, very quickly planes started being weaponized.
Of course.
Do you remember the first...
Humans invent a thing and go, oh, how can we kill people with this?
How can we use this to create domination? Do you remember the first country to use a plane in war?
I mean, I was there, but I don't remember.
You were at when the first country used for war?
Who was it?
Italy.
Interesting.
It was the Italians, and they used it in the Italo-Turkish War in 1911.
I remember it well.
Yeah, I know you do. And the earliest documented usage of flight of some kind took place in ancient China because they would use manned kites for military intelligence and communication. So you got it. That is incredible.
Manned kites.
That was a one-way trip, I'm guessing.
I have to imagine.
But how did they must have lived the way down.
Were there any pictures, illustrations of that?
There are illustrations.
Okay, we're going to have to put
kites.
those on the Facebook.
Somehow they got them down so that they could get the military information. I don't know how they did it, but that had to be horrifying.
Just tie a little note to the string and push it on down.
Maybe that was the Ben Franklin key thing. Yeah. I don't know. That is not something you want to volunteer for.
No.
But you've seen these things of the guys who they glide. They have the gliding suits.
Yeah, hang gliders. Or like the
suits.
Yeah, the flying squirrel suits.
Yeah, like how do they land?
It's pretty scary.
There's a huge percentage of people who die doing that, apparently. No thank you. So in future episodes, we're actually have my wife on, Carol. She's a French professor. Mm-hmm. And we're going to do more explanation in future episodes in similar phrases in different languages and cultures. And I'm just going to mention that, kind of to prime the pump, plant a seed for her coming on future episodes coming fairly soon. There was a British phrase that I wanted to throw in there just because I thought it was real weird. Of course, we're used to our expressions, so they're not weird. The British expression that's similar to this is suck it and see.
Yeah, that's weird to me. Don't know what that means. Like that.
It means give it a whirl or take a chance.
It sounds...
No, it sounds sexual.
Yes, it sounds sexual to me.
It does. We're gonna call that out.
Yeah.
It's not apparently, but it's more like, hey, here's a lollipop, or here's a something.
Yeah, like give it a try.
You think you like it? You're not gonna know until you taste it.
Yeah, or you don't know if you can do it until you do it.
I think so.
Yeah.
But that's to our British friends, we don't understand your terms. Yes. We don't understand. We think ours.
Is that one that's still used, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I asked my friend Jane in Australia, and she actually brought it up.
Oh.
So apparently it's something they still say to this day.
Thanks, Jane.
Thanks, Jane. We love Jane. She's awesome.
Yeah. I think she's the only one who listens to every episode. Thanks, Jane.
No, Joe does. We have Joe and Jane.
Oh, thanks, Joe and Jane.
Yeah.
Those are our listeners.
That's it. So
Quite
far.
literally.
Yeah, pretty much. We're having fun putting this together, though.
Oh, yeah. No, I have a blast hanging out with you, Dad.
You too. And at some point in time, we'll actually do some promotion of this podcast. And so it's not just you and I sitting in a yellow room with white accents.
Oh, okay. Specific.
Yeah. Well, give the
yellow wallpaper reference?
No. What? I don't know what that is.
It's an old piece of literature. Doesn't matter. Go on.
All right. Well, for a future episode, let's go ahead and wrap it up there, Milo. You do the wrap up.
Oh, I didn't realize. Okay, I didn't realize we were wrapping up.
That's it.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Well, thank you for listening, everybody. You can find us on most streaming platforms, and you can review us there too. We'd love it if you did. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, and you can email us at watchyourmouthpod@gmail.com. We'd love it if you'd come and say hi.
We really would. Now, before you do the final goodbye and our tagline, I remembered... What is the thing you learned in this podcast that stood out? We're trying to make this a habit. We've not been good at it. What is the thing you learned or stood out that you remember that you were like, oh, that kind of caught my attention?
I mean, honestly, I'm a person, so the gross stuff really sticks in my mind, and that's going to be hard to shake. But I also just think the name Archibald. I want to see more Archies out there.
Archibald Hoxie?
Archibald Hoxie.
It'd be great if one of his children would contact us.
Yes, reach out if you know that your ancestor was Archibald Hoxie. I hope your name is Archibald too.
Archibald Hoxie the Third.
Yes, that's pretty good. You get those extras on there. But yeah, thanks Tony Gephardt for our theme song. Anything else you got?
No, that's it.
Okay. Well, have a good one, everybody, and stay curious.